Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm a Forbes contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. And our guest today is Holly Mosher. She's a filmmaker who recently produced a film and directed a film called Bonsai People about Muhammad Yunus. Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
Certainly, Muhammad Yunus has a claim to the title of world's greatest social entrepreneur, and so as the documentary filmmaker, you certainly become an authority on the world's greatest social entrepreneur. So we appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today. I want to just start by trying to tap into your experience. What first attracted you to the Muhammad Yunus story?
Well, it was really instantaneous. I hadn't really heard about his work till I read that he got the Nobel Peace Prize. I was reading the New York Times and it announced it, and it said he was helping 6.5 million women, which I realized was 1 out of every 1,000 people on Earth. And I was so curious, why did an economist and a bank get the Peace Prize and not the prize in economics? So, I mean, it was instantaneous. I knew I was going to go to Bangladesh and learn and see for myself and make a film.
How long did you work on the film?
Oh, wow, 5 years. Well, first, when I got there, I found out he's doing so much more than microcredit. I got to the bank and I would get off the elevator on different floors and see Grameen Kalyan, Grameen Shakti, Grameen Shika. And I was like, what is this? What's that? And they're like, oh, that's our healthcare company. Oh, that's our education program. Oh, that's, our energy company. I was like, okay, wait, we've got a whole other story here. And it's as if, banking for 1 out of every 1,000 people on Earth is not enough. But that's the problem. When people are suffering from poverty, they really lack access to, financial services, education, healthcare, and in Bangladesh, energy. Most of the country didn't even have electricity when he started.
Now, in recent years, microcredit, microfinance has come under some scrutiny, and real naysayers have been really pretty down on it. The more objective folks see it as a tool in the quiver and not a solution for poverty. What did you see? You spent some real time looking at the impact of the microcredit programs in under Grameen, and what did you take away from that?
Yes, I think it's a very important distinction to be made, because anytime there's money involved, there's going to be people that take advantage. So even Grameen over the years has had some problems, and they've had to nip them in the bud with a corrupt bank here and there, and they've done a good job actually of cleaning that up. But it's been replicated around the globe, and people use the term microcredit. I actually made up a follow-up film that you can see on my website, filmmakerforchange.com, called Microcredit, the Bigger Picture. And when we look at what is done well in microcredit and when it can go wrong. And it's not a panacea for everybody, but when it's done right with the right interest rates where it's not, usury, then it can be very helpful. But if somebody has a healthcare issue in their family, they're not going to get ahead because all the money is going to go into health. And until recently, I don't know what's going to happen now with the ACA, but 60% of bankruptcies in the US were because of health issues. So you'd see the same thing. And that's also why Yunus's program is very flexible. When people weren't paying back, they would go to a flexible payment plan and extend the length of the loan and extend the interest rate. And here in the US, we could have replicated this when we had our housing crisis, and we could have saved millions of people's homes if we had gone and learned from his way of doing business and gone to a flexible loan payment plan and just changed the length of the loans and changed the interest rates. But unfortunately, when you put profit first instead of people first, the opposite happens.
Yeah, it's just tragic.
Yeah. It makes me sick when I see 100% interest, and they're calling it microfinance. It's not the same. So.
Remind us why the film was called Bonsai People.
Oh, yes. Well, through making the film, I had heard Yunus give this story, and he says, if you take the seed of the tallest tree in the forest and you put it into a flower pot, it's going to be a little tree. And the same thing happens with people, you know, it's a bonsai tree. Same thing happens with people. We are continually, you know, potting people's roots and not giving them the nutrients or the space or all that they need to grow. But if you give everybody the nutrients and the space, they can all blossom to their full potential. So that's why it's called Bonsai People, the vision of Muhammad Yunus, because I see that everybody, you know, we should be encouraging everybody to reach their maximum impact and maximum potential.
Yeah, this is a contrast to a worldview that often sees the poor as being somehow inherently deficient, that
Yes.
they are the cause of their own poverty, right?
Yes, yeah. And he's a brilliant economist, and he's seen it's systemic problems. Like when the famine was, you know, at first he thought he had to improve help with the farmers and improve the yields, but it actually wasn't a problem of the yields. It was a problem of distribution. There was actually plenty of food when the people were starving to death. They just weren't getting it. And you see that problem today. We've got, you know, I see the disparity in America growing. The 1% is getting, you know, increasingly richer, while the poor are being squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And the reason Bangladesh is actually meeting most of the Millennium Development Goals that came in this year is because groups like Grameen and groups like BRAC were really lifting up the bottom by empowering them and giving them what they need. And one of my favorite stories is that Yunus saw that there was night blindness amongst children. And he's like, what is this night blindness? I don't see this in the cities. And it was just a lack of vitamin A. And instead of getting them vitamin tablets, like most people would do, he started a seed company, and he became the biggest seller of seeds so that people could plant their own fruits and vegetables. And they eradicated night blindness amongst children, and they produced income generating activity. You know, if you have a garden, you can sell the surplus and have a little bit of extra income besides being able to have a balanced diet. Yeah, so it's just like, it's genius, the way he always looks at the root of the problem and let's fix it.
Yeah, that is
with a business solution. With a business solution.
Holly, I wonder if your film looked at a number of specific people. I'm thinking it focused on about half a dozen people. I wonder if, as you think about the experience, if you could share one story from the film, or maybe it didn't even make the film, but if there's a story that sort of typifies the impact of microcredit when it works.
Well, yeah, as you say, I follow a handful because I wanted you to see across the board the spectrum of success. And you see some people who have health problems, you know, don't get ahead. But my favorite is the Aroti, who had started, you know, well before I came to visit. She'd been in the program for over 15 years and slowly grew, you know, slowly, step by step. She had started just like everybody else in the film in a one-room house, you know, dirt floors, you know, not enough to eat. And by the time I was filming her, both of her sons had gone to college. She also, you know, when you are poor, you don't have extra free time to volunteer. But now, since she was doing so well, she was actually able to serve on her village council. And the other thing there you saw was the teamwork. Her and her husband made a really great team. You know, when she was off doing her city council duties, he would be supporting, you know, and doing the business stuff. And like, they really worked as a team. And I think that's one, you know, impact hack you have is, you know, the power of teamwork and to remember, you know, to really work together. But I was shocked when I went back because, you know, nobody in these villages in the rural areas had indoor plumbing. And, you know, I went away for 3 years from when I started the film. I wanted to wait and see what happened with the growth. And when I came back, she had actually was building a new house with indoor plumbing. So through, you know, by 20 years into the program, she was able to, you know, do so much, you know, for her family and for her community. And it was just exciting to see her complete, you know, blossoming, becoming that big, beautiful tree that we're talking about.
Yeah. It is exciting to see the potential, and clearly that's why it's scaled so much. in the end of the film, you share something disturbing, and that is that the Bangladeshi government essentially took Grameen Bank away from Muhammad Yunus. What was the deal there?
Yes, this was very disheartening. I don't know if you know much about the politics of Bangladesh, but there have been two prime ministers that have come to power and have been in power for a long time, and they came to power through blood, through fighting. And one is the daughter of the founder of the country, and one was the spouse of one of the leaders of the country. And it's just, I think the current prime minister was a little bit jealous of Yunus's notoriety and also saw the money. Like I said, Yunus's programs are sustainable businesses, and his phone company is actually the largest company in the country, and it's the biggest taxpayer in the country, because that's the only one that's actually not a social business, which we can explain later. But that one is over 50 Telenor, so it's a very profitable company. They do cell phones all over. And I think they had their eye on the phone company because some of their recommendations were that all of the companies should become a part of the bank, but they're legally separate companies, so they're not a part of the bank. So I think they, it's often follow the money, see where things are going, and then, just the fact that there's notoriety, his notoriety. And I have an interview that the BBC did on my website that shows an interview where, the prime minister had said that Yunus was sucking the blood of the poor. And I was like, and this was after I'd left, and I was like, did I miss something? And then that's why I went back and also wanted to follow up. I was like, I've seen his work. He's, all he's doing is tirelessly helping the poor and trying to improve his country. I mean, tirelessly, and not for profit. He doesn't own shares in his company. It's, and if you watch that interview, she tries to suggest that the interest rates he's charging are over 40%, but she's insinuating it in her question or in her statement. And you see that, but that's not the interest rate. It's mostly a 10% flat fee. And then if people go to a flexible loan, it adjusts. But, and if you watch that, you'll see. And it's sad because last year there were elections and the international community did not really even recognize the elections, and there was bloodshed at the polls. And it's very concerning what's happening. And they've now, all the female members that were borrowers that were on the board of directors have termed out, and now they're not having borrowers on the board of directors. And to me, that seems foolish. They haven't yet changed the way the bank works, and I'm not, so I keep waiting to hear if they're going to do that. So far they haven't, but that's where I get concerned, where they might raise the interest rates, or lower the interest rates to look good, to look like heroes, but then it wouldn't be sustainable. Because one of the important things about social business is that you're actually sustaining your business so that you can grow and keep giving back, but all the profits stay within the company to continue doing the work.
Yeah. Well, Holly, this has just been a great discussion, but I want to tap into your psyche a little bit personally.
Sure.
As a filmmaker, you become well-known, well-respected, and certainly a role model to many, but who do you look up to?
Well, I have to look up to Yunus after spending 5 years following his work. I mean, I'm so lucky with my work that I got to go and see this firsthand and, spend a little bit of time with him and see the impact, because I think we all underestimate our own power. And to see that if you just continue doing a little bit each day, where you might get, he didn't set out to help 1 out of every 1,000 people on earth. He just set out to help one person. And if we just remember doing a little bit each day. I actually closed the film with this one piece of advice. He says, imagine the world you want and write it down and put it on the wall and see what you're doing each day to get there. And I think that's just such great advice. And the power of the other one thing I learned is the power of, the solidarity. And I realized both of the films I've directed are about women's circles. In the first film, it was for emotional support circles. In this one, it's financial support circles. So after finishing the film, I was like, wow, why don't I have my own support circle? So I started a monthly women's group, and we just meet once a month. And I've just seen so many people flourish through the group by having that solidarity. And that's another thing I think I've learned through my work.
Yeah, that is great. Holly, why are you a filmmaker, and why do you cover social issues? Why do you care about the welfare of others? Yes.
Well, originally, I went to film school, and I would just take any work, and then, but for the most part. And then I did 2 thrillers, and one of them was the most challenging job ever. And I started therapy, and I was like, I might as well be doing something else. Why am I doing this for a film that doesn't matter? And then in therapy, I realized, well, if I'm doing this for things I care about and to make the world a better place, then I can keep doing this. And, ever since then, I haven't turned back, and I'm so much happier. And I love also doing a bit of activism with the films. So I do the films, and they're a tool, but then I also join in the community. Like now I'm on my local board of the Social Enterprise Alliance, and we've been helping build the movement of social enterprise here in the US. And there's groups, around the world that are working on this. Actually, next week, if you have European listeners, is the Global Social Business Summit, which Yunus will be at November 4th through 7th. And people are just like microcredit 40 years ago, nobody knew about, even 5 years ago, social business and social enterprise was brand new. And now universities are teaching it, and the word is really getting out there. So I call myself Filmmaker for Change because I do the films, and then I also do supporting activism to help grow the action, grow the movement. And imagine if just 10% of our businesses are social businesses where their main focus is on helping people rather than profit. Imagine the country we'll have. It'll be beautiful. And I think we're really on track to getting there. Legally, there's been L3Cs for benefit, B Corps, lots of things are coming out right now. So now is the beginning of the movement. And if we can all work, how nice if your work is actually what you like to do to give back, because we all have our selfless side and like to volunteer and improve our community. But if that can be our work, it's, it's so much more rewarding. Like, I can't tell you, my life has changed for the better since I've been focusing on films that really matter.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, you mentioned the concept of an impact hack, and you shared the great example of teamwork and collaboration. But yeah. I wonder if there's another example from your life experience that you could share of an impact hack, some way to maximize the good we do.
Well, I really think that it's working together and having that support system and joining the local community that's working on these things. Because if you're good at one thing and somebody else is good at something else, and you partner, you're going to go so much further. And I think that was the power of the mom and pops of yesteryear, in America. And to me, I think that's, really teaming up, because there's that African proverb, alone you go fast, but together you go far.
Yeah, and, that's a great reminder. And I think that's exactly where we in the impact community want to go. We want to go far. It's not about
persistent
fast.
And not giving up. Yunus was doing Grameen Bank right when the world economy collapsed and the price of milk quadrupled. And, his other team players were like, well, why don't we just sell it at a loss and keep going so that the kids get the yogurt? And he's like, well, that's not a sustainable business. So they went back to the drawing board, and they made the package sizing smaller so that they could still run at a small profit, so that they would get, be profitable, because it can't be the charity. The idea of social business is that you're not a nonprofit. You're a business that is, you know, non-loss, non-dividend. You know, people aren't making money out of it. You're just doing the task at hand to help people.
Yeah.
But if you're at a loss, you're constantly begging for money. And imagine what a loss, human resource, like what wasted time to constantly be fundraising. It's not fun. It's such a waste of human potential and human energy.
Well, that is an inspiring notion. Holly, I really want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Before you go, tell people how they can learn more about your work.
Sure. Well, you can get access to all of my films through my website, Filmmaker change.com. And then I'm very active on Twitter at Films for Change. So,
fantastic.
And feel free to reach out, email me. I'd be happy to answer any more questions. We have some videos of Yunus's companies on bonsaimovie.com. People can, and his solar company now has installed 2 million homes. When I finished that little clip, it was 250,000. It's now 2 million. So some of the numbers are outdated, but you can still get the concept.
Amazing. It's really inspiring work. Inspiring work.
Yeah.
Well, Holly, thank you very much for being with us today. We wish you every success in your continued good work.
Thank you. Likewise.
All righty. Let's do some good.
Okay. Bye.